The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at www.mtsu.edu/CEM. Welcome to MTSU and the SPED Collaborative at MTSU. We are happy to have you online, and we are really happy to have the people sitting in the room today as well as those tuning in on live stream. Just so everyone knows, we have people today from 15 school districts in Tennessee joining us, and we even have some people joining from Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, so we especially welcome our out-of-state colleagues joining us today. We have people joining today from several universities, including MTSU, Tennessee Tech, Trevecca, Cabrini, and University of Kentucky. So welcome everyone. This is the SPED Collaborative at MTSU. We are a professional development initiative targeting, supporting special education teachers in Tennessee and beyond. We have our model that we use for professional development here is practitioner-driven. We ask teachers, what do you need help with? And then we ask teachers, special education teachers, who are the good people in your field? Who are the teachers doing it right? And so they nominate presenters. And the presenters here today with us have been nominated by participants in the SPED Collaborative. So we hope that teachers can go away from these sessions with information that is relevant and that is easy to use in your classroom tomorrow, or actually Monday. But we want it to be good content, usable in the classroom. So that's what the SPED Collaborative is about. We have other collaboratives here following the same model, supporting teachers of English learners, school counselors. And we have a unique initiative called the Cross Collaborative happening in January every year, where we bring together school counselors, teachers of English learners, and special ed teachers. So I'm so happy you're here today. I would like to introduce one of our partners, Dr. Alicia Pence. Would you join me up here? Dr. Pence is our faculty liaison. She is in the special education faculty at MTSU, and she has been instrumental in helping us get this SPED Collaborative going. Dr. Pence, would you like to?
Thank you. Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm glad you're here. Dr. Laura Clark has worked so hard to get this initiative up and running. So this is our third collaborative we've had, so we're excited that you're here. We hope to keep growing. Yes. So this is exciting. And you know, I just want to start with a message. We're better together. This is part of our Council for Exceptional Children message and our conference we just had, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the very end of today. But if you're not a member of Council for Exceptional Children, think about it. It's another way to get connected in your professional development world. But we're so happy at MTSU that you're here and you're a part of this. We're better together because we can grow, we can share ideas, and keep on trucking, y'all. Our jobs are tough as SPED people and our professionals in this world. So I'm not only a special ed professor, but I'm also a former educator and a parent of a child with a disability. So advocacy is a really important part of our work too. So we're happy you're here and we're ready for a really exciting day. So thank you for coming. Many of you all have driven very far this morning and we're appreciative. It's going to be a great day. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Pence.
I appreciate it.
So now I would like to introduce our presenters today. You have an agenda for the day. We are happy to have some presenters today from Shelby County, and we're happy to have people here today from Metro Nashville Schools and from Rutherford County later today. So let us begin. You know, before we do though, does anyone want to ask me any question before we move ahead in this day today? Okay, so let me go ahead. Our first session today is developing effective co-teaching partnerships, establishing guidelines for collaborative relationships between co-teachers and other related professionals. And it is presented today by Dr. Andrea Alston, who has 18 years experience in special education, and she is a director of special populations in West Tennessee. And she'll be assisted today by Ms. Tamisha Morrell with 17 years of special education experience, and she is a special education program administrator in West Tennessee. I'm going to ask these ladies to join me, but I do want to remind everyone as we have these sessions, add any questions to our live stream people. If you have questions, put them on the chat in live stream so that we can know your questions. We will address the questions at the end of the session. If you have questions here in the room, live, we will have a Q&A session at the end, and you may ask questions at that time. We will also ask, give us feedback at the end of this day to tell us what you thought about it, what are topics you'd like to have help on, and who are the good practitioners that you'd like to nominate to be a presenter. Okay? Those are the things we're going to ask of you today in terms of how you engage with us. So at this time, Dr. Alston and Ms. Morrell, would you join me up here? So we look forward to hearing what you have to give us today, and you may have the floor.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Clark. Thank you guys for being here today. Thank you for our online, or as they say in the TV land, good morning, everyone. Like she said, I'm Dr. Andrea Alston. I'm the Director of Special Populations, and this is my co-presenter.
I'm Tamisha Morrell. I currently work for Green Dot Public Schools in Memphis, Tennessee, as a special education program administrator. So I welcome all of you, and I hope that you can take just one little piece of nugget with you at the end of our presentation. Okay? All right, so we're just going to establish some norms. We want to encourage engagement from everyone. I know it's early, I know it's cold, but we want you to just be engaged in relevant dialogue and inserting mindful moments during extended times.
Begin with the end in mind.
I will model the expectation of preparedness and engagement following the agenda. So we do have some times where you will work together as teams and you will collab throughout this process. So get that brain woke up and body moving and energy going so you can take in this information.
And then making sure we have an intentional conversations, no sidebar conversations, be more to the subject that we're talking about.
How are you guys feeling about those? Is there anyone that anyone would be intentional about? I know for me, just being intentional, clear and concise and respectful. We may not always agree, but when we, respect each other's opinions and thoughts and comments, I think that's something I'm going to be intentional about. So just take time to just kind of look over what you'll be intentional about in this time with us today. Any questions? All right. All right.
So once again, I'm Dr. Andrea Alston. I'm the Director of Special Populations. I work at Promise Academy Spring Hill in Memphis, Tennessee. I've been in special education itself for 18 years now. I've taught in the private sector, I've taught in the public sector, I've even taught in corrections. So yes, I have the full gamut of everything. My background is in ESL. It is also in gifted education. It is in special education. It is in English. I think 6 through 12 is one of my endorsements. I just like to go to school, I guess.
She does. She is true lifelong learner. So I have been in education for 17 years. It'll be 18 in January. I worked as a special education teacher, mostly self-contained. We call it functional skills. When I first started, it was CDC, moderate, mild, for those of you who may remember those terms. I've also worked in day treatment, and what else? I've had a big class for those of you from Shelby County, which is for students with autism who have some challenges with behavior. At 1 year I did inclusion. Wasn't really a fan of it, so this is why this is so important to me today, because I think a lot of teachers steer away from being an inclusion teacher because it doesn't always seem to work with those relationships and those partnerships in the school. And last year I was our behavior specialist, and this year I moved up to our special education program administrator. So that's me in a nutshell. And I see one of my assistant principals here from Buff. We serve 5 schools, so I have 5 schools that I maintain, 3 high schools and 2 middle schools. We actually met at a SPED conference in '07, and we just click, connect, and we work together, taught together, so, and here we are.
All right, so I'm gonna just put this in a nutshell, the purpose of today. Basically, we want to make sure that you are understanding collaborative relationships, whether that's a general education teacher, special education teacher, and then don't forget about those related professionals, okay? Sometimes we forget they come into our space and then we're like, oh, why are they in my room? But you got to remember they play a vital part in the child's educational learning, and you can learn some things from them, okay? So we want to make sure today we can kind of collaborate, talk about those relationships, and talk about what that actually means to kind of work together.
And also, I think a lot of times when we think about co-teaching, we think gen ed teacher, inclusion teacher, but as a self-contained teacher, you really have to have those partnerships with your instructional assistants as well. We all know that sometimes those are some of the most difficult situations, you know, because you're spending a lot more time together. It's not I'm in and out. We're in this thing together. And so really helping them to buy in to the process, and also knowing that they're a partner, they're a teacher in their room as well, and treating them as such makes a difference in how we grow our students.
So our agenda for today, we're going to do a Connect 4 team builder. We're going to try to figure it out with the amount of people that's in the room, and then I will also try to put it on the dot cam for those at home. Co-teaching will be defined. We'll talk about the co-teacher models. We'll talk about the benefits and barriers. We'll talk about a perfect practice, which we'll do another role model scenarios. I will talk about additional supports, and then as well as we will take time to reflect.
Okay? All right.
So while she gets ready, I'm going to pass out the note catcher so that you can actively participate and take notes. Okay.
All right, any questions about the agenda? All right, so as she is passing out the note catcher, you can just kind of look over our objectives. We want to establish a common language and working definition for co-teaching, create a definition for the professional relationship between co-teachers, improve collaboration between gen ed teachers, special education teachers, and other related professionals. Develop a collaborative action plan, which will be the last step in your on your note catcher, and we'll also pass these out as well. There is some steps on how you can create an action plan. You're going to develop, and provide additional supports for a diverse learner population, our ESL, ELL, MLL students, and so forth in the end. All right, so we are getting ready to gather in our teams. Are you staying?
Yes.
Okay, so let's 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So let's do you two, and then you can join one of them. And what we're going to do is we're going to pass out some words. You're going to get your 4 words, which are very random, and you're going to work as a team to complete a chat or song about teamwork You must use all 4 words and be as creative as possible. You're going to have 3 minutes to do so. Are we prepared to do that? Okay. A chant or a song. And 3 minutes. So give you 30 seconds to go ahead and gather in your teams.
How many people are we going to try to do?
1 is 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and she's going to join one of the groups.
Okay.
All right, group. Emma. Oh, my bad. Fix that for me.
They are with us. I think.
You got you one too.
No, we only needed one.
No, we
We needed one.
got two.
Not 3. We needed 1.
We got more. Complaints.
Compliance.
God like this. Compliance runs on a clock. That's good.
All right, how many of you are ready? Prepared to share out? All right, so how many of you have been prepared for the best lesson and you're ready? Your administrator said, I'll be down there in 5 minutes, and 5 minutes turns into 10, and 10 turns into 20. And then they say, then you move on. You figure we're going to schedule for another day. And then you start doing arts and crafts, and they show up and say, hey, I'm ready, right? You ready? I'm ready. They throw a monkey wrench in your day, right? So I'm about to throw a monkey wrench in your day. If you are group 1, whatever chant or song you've come up with, you're going to perform it to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off.
Oh, we already have a song.
This is your monkey wrench. This is your monkey wrench. Use your phones. You can use your phones to look it up. And you're going to take what you have prepared, and now you are going to do it to Taylor Swift, Shake It Off. Group 2, and you're going to look for the clean version. You're going to use Blow the Whistle by Too Short. And make sure when you're looking up this song, it is the clean version. Group 3, you're going to use Mary Had a Little Lamb. And group 4, you're going to, no, it's not Snoop Dogg. You're going to use Aerosmith, Walk This Way. You're going to have 2 minutes to reconvene. Your song is Too Short, Blow the Whistle. And when you do that, put clean. And so you're going to take what you have compiled as a team and put it to that song. And we want to see your best dance moves. The time starts now. You have 2 minutes.
I don't know the words itself.
30 seconds. Remember, you're going to perform your chat to the beat of the song that you were given. Do we have a volunteer? All right, and we're back.
Or we can do volunteer.
Volunteer, voluntold. I love voluntold. All right. All right, group 4.
Okay.
So when you come up, we want you to share your words.
You gotta come up there and be on the camera.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
You're going to be on the camera wherever you are.
I thought we was just gonna do it right here.
You got this.
So all 4 cameras are getting up. These people out in camera world gonna see you. I'm not doing it. Okay.
You
All right.
got it.
I'm just saying.
Come on up. All right, so you're going to tell us your words.
Okay.
And then you're going to do your chant. And how it and tell us how it connects to teamwork.
How it connects to teamwork.
Teamwork.
Well, we worked as a team.
Mm-hmm.
We used all 4 words.
Which word?
The words are card, mirror, wall, comb.
Okay.
So those were the words.
Okay. And your song, your
And
monkey
our
wrench song.
Yes, was Aerosmith, Walk This Way.
Okay.
Which, I don't know how it really connects to the words, but we just gonna try
You're
to
going to make it work.
try to make it work.
It doesn't connect.
Oh, I'm the dancer, so I don't need to.
Wait a minute.
Because I'm the dancer.
I can't hold know all three things? Yes, you can. Yes, you can. Okay.
You got
I
this.
got you. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
And sing.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I'm not good at technology. Y'all forgive me. Okay. Let's see. Checking my cue card, looking in the mirror, hanging on the wall. Combing my hair, getting ready for the SPED ball.
All right.
Good job,
Thank you,
Group
Group
4. Good job.
And thank you for using all 4 words. Who's up next? Group 1, come on up. Share with us your words.
And how did you use teamwork?
And your monkey wrench song.
All right. Okay.
So, our monkey wrench song was Shake It Off by Taylor Swift. Our words were square, more, sky, and rock. Clock. Yeah, that one. We're not singers, but we're doing it anyway. Well, maybe you are. I know I'm not. So, in that case.
And we worked together as a team very, very, very well. We bounced off of each other. When I would come up with a stanza, she would like, add that stanza or take that out. So we worked very well as a
Quality,
team.
in case you were wondering.
Yes. Okay.
All right.
Okay, ready?
We're going. Compliance runs on a clock.
Clock. In order to fly, reach the sky. Be there or be square. Give us more so it's fair. Just give us more, give us more, give us more, give us more. Make it fair.
Good. Good. That was good.
All right. Group.
All
Come-
right.
all
Group
right.
2. Group 2.
Okay, our words were red, sock, slide, and time. And we did a chant, not a song. Okay. And we didn't know this song, so.
We didn't know the song at all.
Who's starting? You can. The red sock slides down in time. The red sock slides down in time. The red sock slides down in time.
Okay, we're done. Good job. You did good. You did good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
last
Our
group,
last
last
group, Group 3.
All right, we made a chant. And so Mary had a little lamb, and we are struggling with the nursery rhyme. Okay. So she's probably going to do most of the singing. I don't get it. Oh, our words were tight, floor, leg, and black. Okay. And we actually made it about teamwork. Okay.
You ready?
I think.
Can't
Fight, we have to be tight. Don't hit the floor. Together we can do more. Don't break a leg. You can't be too proud to beg. Don't see black. I always got your back.
Nice, ladies.
All right. Thank you for being vulnerable and open to this. I do have some questions. First, anybody, what strategies did you use to plan?
We tried to make the words connect even though they didn't necessarily connect. And then we was trying to think of, like, as a SPED teacher, I'm always thinking, okay, well, what about SPED? So I got to put the word SPED in there. But none of the words rhyme. So we wanted it to rhyme because she was just throwing stuff out. I was like, that doesn't rhyme.
She's like, it doesn't have to rhyme, but it should. But so we was trying to like make the words connect, and then when you like changed it, put it to the music, then it just changed altogether because now it had to, like, in my mind, it was like, okay, now it has to have a melody, like, you know, fit the melody to the music. And I'm like, well, can you do that to this music? You know, so that was a true monkey wrench because it changed how we were just going to, like, just kind of throw the words out there, trying to put it to the song.
You can have the best laid plans, and even during a lesson, you think, oh, I stayed up all night. I got this lesson, and all the students are just sitting there looking at you with a flat face. And you have to change in the midst of a moment. Yes.
Speaking of co-teaching, we bounced off each other. And what I wrote, and you can see my line scratched through what I wrote, and I scratched it out, and she changed it. So it made us be more adapted to each other's skills, and which I like that. When
you're co-teaching, sometimes you're begging for feedback. We got a lot of silent partners in the classroom, and you're wondering, are you truly a co-partner in this, or are you just here to look pretty? Because sometimes I wonder. And, you know, her product was great, but there's room for growth. And so my feedback and her feedback for my stuff was our way of making each other's product a better one altogether. Not saying it was stellar, but it was a better one.
But even the fact that you were open and willing to do it.
Yes. Willing, I don't know, but we did it.
Group 2, what barriers did you face?
The song,
The song.
for sure.
And how did you work through it?
We just hope for the best, I guess. That's all we did, yeah.
Is there anything you noticed?
Coming up with the phrase wasn't bad. She came up with it in no time, but trying to match that to the song and then dance to it was difficult, to say the least.
You pulled it out.
We had a little dance.
The wave.
Good.
What were your team's biggest strengths? Group 3?
I would say like group 1, just working with each other and bouncing ideas off of each other. We had words that they just didn't go together. So like group 4, we came up with a rhyme, and we just bounced off of each other and worked well together.
And that's what's intentional. Sometimes we get things and we're like, how do we make this work? And, you know, we have to sit down with our partners and figure it out, right? If you had to do this again, what would you do differently?
We would come up with more words.
More words. Okay.
Use more math words.
Okay. Incorporating some math. Anybody else?
I think it's funny that all of you, even though you didn't have any parameters around it, you stuck with either co-teaching or a subject. Is that our teaching brain doing that? Yeah.
It just said about teamwork.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes we get into those habits that we don't realize we get into. Because I heard you say about SPED. We didn't say it had to be about SPED. So sometimes think about that when you're co-teaching or collaborating with others. Some of our habits.
Any group split on a decision on which way to go? Where there's a little slight tension, even if it was friendly tension. Like, I don't think we should do this.
That's just our nature. Because initially, like I said, she was just throwing out words. I'm like, it has to rhyme. And she's like, no, it doesn't. I'm like, yes, it does. It just has to go.
So did you end up putting rhyming words in there?
I think we made it rhyme.
Yeah.
We did.
Because you wanted it to rhyme.
And she didn't. And I'm like, no, it has to. Like, it just has to make it better. I'm also the cheer coach, so like all our stuff rhymes. Makes it better and it's easier to learn.
Well, thank you. So as you can tell, most of us have done inclusion in this room, is that at some point or know about it, have to experience it or manage. It can be somewhat difficult, and you have to do things where you have to figure out how to make this relationship work, right? Because it's a partnership, it's a marriage. All right, so our essential questions today, which we will try to answer at the end, if you can grab just one little nugget from us today, is how do we collaborate to effectively service our students?
And what are some barriers we could encounter in initiating and sustaining effective collaboration?
And I'll say with fidelity.
There you go.
Definitely with fidelity.
Yes.
So our core idea, just something to think about. Children are the priority, change is the reality, and collaboration is the strategy. And this is a quote by Judith Billings. All right, so according to the United States Department of Education, co-teaching is the instructional arrangement in which a general education teacher and a special education teacher deliver core instruction along with specialized instruction as needed to a diverse group of students in a single physical space. But I would add to that, like I said, if you, I've had related service providers come into my room where we've done lessons together. So we have to do what? We have to plan. I've had assistants that were awesome and some maybe not so awesome, but you know, I think the best rooms that ran really well was when we met and we sat and we all bought into wanting to improve the students in there. And we just rocked and roll. And you really see it when you're absent or you step away for a meeting and you come back and the room is still running the way it should run, and they're not just watching videos and so forth. So it's just, you know, I know we talk about Gen Ed and SPED, but it's so much more to the relationships that we have with other people and how we work with them.
Co-teacher partnerships basically require the educators to come together and make joint decisions. If we can't collaborate and we can't have those open door kind of conversations, then what are we here for? Not only do we have to have those type of relationships, but we also got to share their responsibility. We hope that today that you can kind of see how the co-teaching kind of model works through what we're doing and how we're presenting. And then not only that, be accountable. I can't just leave you hanging and just say, oh, I just pick up at the end. That's cool. I got it in the beginning or I got it at the end. That's got to be a collaboration. That's why I said effective, effective, effective. If you see something wrong, you need to talk to each other about it. It should be like a couple of groups said, you kind of play off each other. We said a couple of things, we compromised. That's why I said they were willing and open. That's all the key with co-teaching, especially what? It's a partnership.
What experiences have you had with co-teaching? Have many of you had this experience? Co-teaching? How long have you guys been working together?
We did. It was a couple of years ago. We worked together, what, 2 years? Almost 3 years?
We worked,
2, 3
Was it instantaneously?
Yeah.
It was the first when you said it.
Because it was the first. It was the first time. Because I remember when I went into her room, I was like, "Are you sure you're not a SPED teacher?" She's like, "No, I teach geometry." And I've been teaching geometry, and like my energy and her energy was always like over the top, and it was like almost instantaneous. And so, like when we would be in the room. Sometimes she'd be at one board and I would be at the other board. And in other classrooms, when I would go in to co-teach, that was always issues like, Ms. McCowan, you're too loud. And I'd be like, I don't know how to whisper. Right. But with her, it just, I don't know, like it was a loud room, which was different because most rooms are supposed to be quiet. Right. But like she'd be at a board, I'd be at a board. And then sometimes we just rotate and she's like, okay, well, you teach the first 2 over here. I'm going to teach these 2 over here. And then we'll go about 20 minutes and then we'll switch. And so she was always kind of like a little dictator. And I followed.
Are you
but
sure she was the dictator?
Yeah, she was the dictator. But I followed because it was always based off of like, you know, she grade papers or whatever. Right. And so she'd always share where the students were. And she's like, so I split up the groups based on who didn't get it. So it was never just, well, take your kids and you go over there with your kids. It was always it's our kids. And so she split up the groups. And so we always rotate with what was best for the student in mind. So with her, it was like that.
That's a good partnership. Good example.
Very hard to find.
Yeah.
All right, so co-teaching at its best, I said it before, is like a marriage. We're night and day. Like, we're not, I'm more shy and reserved, and she's all bubbly. She's always looking for, you know, the next thing to go to. And we were friends for years before we ended up in the same place, and we had to, you know, learn each other over again because it was different when you're outside friends and, you know, you're going to conferences together and then you start working together and you got to apply those practices, but you also have to take in mind teaching styles and personalities.
And I'm everywhere.
And personalities and things of that nature. So co-teaching is two people sharing responsibility for teaching some or all of the students assigned to a classroom. And it's fair, right? It's fair. And so we had to compromise. Now, we had some of those closed door moments. We did. And but it never got personal. And we had to figure our way through it. Just like in relationships, when you start off, everything's all nice and good, and you start getting comfortable in your relationship, sometimes we take each other for granted. Yep. And as you extend in that relationship and you're 5 years down the road, you know, people change, they grow, and you have to still come back together and keep learning each other. And that's what we had to do. Mm-hmm. After years of knowing each other, we had to figure out how to make it work for us. And in the end, we did. We had a success story, yes. But it was a learning curve for both of us.
Yes.
All right. Co-teaching myths.
Both teachers should have the same teaching style. Wrong.
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 How many of you have been told that? You've been, oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think for me, that 1 year, I would say that 1 year at band camp, that I did inclusion, I had an awesome teacher, and I was kind of shy and reserved because I had been in self-contained at that point for like 6 or 7 years. And then I moved to like middle school, so I was nervous about the content. And but she was so patient. I always took notes. I mean, she was awesome, and she just let me feel my way through. And then when I went to my other class, I had a teacher. She never shared her lesson plans with me, and she said, just do what I do. But what she did wasn't really effective. Or she'd say, look on my website. My lesson plans are on there. And when I look on there and I go in the room, and it's something totally different going on. And so I quickly went and moved forward, you know, to something else because it wasn't a good experience for me. And so there's that.
Yeah. Only one teacher creates the lesson plans. No. Because how do I know what you've already done or what your end goal is? So that's something we need to talk about, right? So if you're the only one doing them and I'm coming into the room, I'm just like one of the kids, like whatever she's going over, hey, you should be on number 5.
And that's more of an assistant, right? That's not co-teaching. That's and what I loved about my model situation was I had a parent reach out to me and say, hey, my son says you're pulling kids out and working with them. Can you help him as well? Well, he was a Gen Ed student. And we moved so well together that they didn't even know that I was a SPED teacher. They just like, hey, why she always taking this group out at certain times? I want to go too. And so that's what you want. You don't want to be able to, I shouldn't be able to identify who the students are in the room with disabilities or who have IEPs. And so that's what we want to, you know, strive for. And then only one teacher having a responsibility for classroom discipline.
No, one is the bad cop, one is the good cop. No.
Most of the time, and I even see this now, when I'm visiting classrooms, or if I'm checking in with a teacher, they'll get a call, hey, so-and-so's acting up down here, can you come get them? And, you know, like, we're highly qualified professionals as well, but we're not disciplinaries. That's not what we're there for. We're strategists, we're interventionists, and we're here to support the students in that room and, you know, our colleagues, but we're not there to just come get a child because they're acting up.
Right. The special education teacher is the only one responsible for those with disabilities.
I think that same year, I had a teacher, same teacher, she would, one, call out my students' grades, and they were always the lowest grades. Wow. But she would always say, Morel's kids. And then she'll call their name, you made a 53, you made a 42. And we end up having to have some meetings about that, but imagine what that did to them. Right. And I was new to that school, so I didn't know, you know, how much I could really fight. But I just remember one of my principals, he was like, you really advocate for your students. He said, don't ever lose that. He said, even when it's up against me, because I will go to bat for them. And I end up having to, because I saw, when I looked at this one boy face, and I see it right now, when she called his name and said his grade, like he just slumped in his desk. And that's not something we want. And so, but it was that constant, Morell's kids. And then I had another teacher, she would have the students sitting on the floor, waiting on me to pick them up, but the seats were empty. And I had to deal with that as well. So it was just a lot. It wasn't, I had one good experience, but in that year, because I had 2 different grade levels, I don't know if that was something they were accustomed to doing, but I just felt like I was in constant, you shouldn't be doing this is not right. And it was a lot of fight. Just trying to just treat them as human. You know, they're human. They're human beings. They're children. But them sitting on the floor, I think that was that last straw for me.
Yes.
That's a problem that I'm having. Those are Miss Pitt's children. Or they were texting me, I think this is one of your students.
One of your kids.
That's acting up. And I'm in my pull-out sessions working. And I can hear my child screaming and hollering, and then when I go in the classroom, there's a principal standing there, a social worker standing there. I'm like, and you pulled me to calm him? Because he's one of my students? And that bothered me so. You know, I had to do the CPI stuff and all that, but still, you know, these are all our children. And if the principal's standing there and cannot calm him, you might want to revisit your
Policies.
So do you have anyone to advocate for you?
Well, right now, all our SPED teachers are gone, and I'm a one-man show in my building, and I'm tired, and I'm doing everything, behaviors, I'm doing everything. So it's
Some healthy boundaries.
Right. So that might be a conversation you need to have with the team.
what team?
Well, you named the principal. Well, you got to make a team at this
Okay.
point, because you got the principal, you got the social worker, and the teacher. If this
Yeah,
continues to happen, then we need to talk about, if A, then this is what so-and-so needs to do. If B, you should be the last resort, or called in the beginning if they see those triggers. So that's something you can talk about.
Like, how can we set student B up for success? Like, give them some ownership and accountability as well. So even if you say, well, I can do this, but during these times, what does it look like when I'm in classroom? Which one of you? Don't phrase the narrative in a way that they have to take responsibility without you telling them I'm not going to do, because they, you know, it's that fine line.
No, I don't do that. That's unprofessional.
Yeah, yeah.
But you
But you
because
have
you
to work
can't
together.
sustain that.
Yeah.
Been there,
Yeah.
but that you
Yep.
can't sustain that because you have burnout,
Yep.
and that's how we lose great teachers.
So it needs to be more collaborative.
And also, you know, I think the last one, it says the class suffers because the curriculum is watered down. Differentiation is not watering down. I think a lot of education, I think we spend a lot of time talking about co-teaching with SPED teachers. We don't spend enough time with gen ed teachers. And that's one thing that I'm striving for next school year, is really having SPED training with our inclusion teachers, our gen ed inclusion teachers, and including them in some of these things and conversations and looking at the SPED data and things of that nature. Because if we don't start shifting the way we do things, we'll always be back to this type of narrative.
And SPED teachers need to be a part of the curriculum conversations too. So like if you're in the English class or the math class, why are you not in those collaborative team meetings? Because you need to know the content. It's better to ask when the team is together than trying to ask the gen ed teacher, because they're already bogged down just like you are. But it's better to see it when it's firsthand instead of secondhand.
And I think that's very important. Last month I was observing a teacher, and I was like giving her little things, because I don't like to mark people down low. But, you know, I was like, hey, why don't you ask this question, or I put a little note on a little sticky tab or something, and she finally just said, I don't know the content. And she was just uncomfortable. So that was one thing that I have to address. But in the meantime, I said there are certain questions you can ask and you may not even know the answer. So I met with her gen ed counterpart, and I was like, so she can listen to, she can ask questions that students may have, right? She's still a part of it. Or she can ask questions that she may have. I said, you may have to be prepared to give the answer. I said, but she's still a part of it. Because what I don't want, our teachers to do is just sit around in the corner, and that's what I was seeing. And I asked why, and it was always, I don't know the content. And so we've got to get better with that. Sorry, that's my little spiel.
All right. So it's a little difficult to see, but advantages of co-teaching. So basically, they're going to receive their instruction with their general education peers. Of course, we know that they receive their tiered instruction as well as differentiation within the class. We want them to be integrated as much as possible and pulled out less often. You're getting instruction from 2 highly qualified teachers. Well, we hope these days.
No, you have to now.
Students are educated in the same environments there, what we said about the pulling out. Accommodation can be made while students access the general ed curriculum, and keyword, maintains high academic rigor and expectations, because guess what? They still have to take those tests.
They still have to take them. And I can tell you right now, even with self-contained, the alternative test has changed a lot over the years. From when I first started, we were doing the portfolios and you writing in the blue ink.
Right.
And so I think the first time I piloted with my kids, they were so stressed out because it was still based on grade level standards. Even for our students that had IQs of 40 and 30, couldn't read, didn't know their colors. So I had to start shifting how our functional skills teachers taught. We want to make sure it's still standard based. And we would scaffold it out, but we still need to expose them to this. So we want to make sure we're always having rigorous learning, no matter what the setting is.
Yes. And for teachers, we've got shared responsibility to help to lessen that load, we hope. And combined ownership of the instructional environment, increased collaboration, which we talked about, and mutual goals. You got to come in with some goals set in mind, because your goal for your students might be a little different than the teacher's goals for the gen ed curriculum, but working together, you can do it as a whole goal, because you have some other students that are in the class that are struggling as well. They're just not identified, and then you can help those kids as well. Less teacher isolation, we hope, and sharing ideas and expertise, increase efficiency. The 2 adults should decrease behavior referrals and decrease of student to teacher ratios. We know that the classroom sizes are getting larger because we're having less teachers, but we hope that those 2 teachers, if they collaborate well, you'll never notice you've got 50 kids in your classroom bumper to bumper.
How many of you actually get to plan with your counterpart?
Just one? Just one?
We don't have an inclusion teacher at this point. We are still doing pullouts. Yes.
Are you elementary?
I'm elementary, she's middle school, high school, still the same way. So we came to kind of figure out how other districts are already at that point, because we are not yet.
And you're the only one for each school, or?
I am, well, we each have 3 grade levels. I'm K2, she's 6-8, we have a 3-5, and then we have a high school, and then 2 CDC teachers.
You definitely would need more staffing to make that happen because of scheduling.
That is, I mean, it's coming down, right? Like, that's about to be a requirement.
Yeah.
I thought it already was.
It already is as part of IDEA. It was reauthorized in 2015 with our ESSER funds.
So to make it work, the best way would at least be 2, depending on how many kids you have, let's start with that. At least 2 teachers per, if you're saying K2, 3-5, 6-8, at least. so that they could split between the classes. But it depends on how many kids you have.
It's
If you have
all-
more than that, then of course you would need more teachers for those rooms.
Okay, so
I know.
It's about, and then it's the scheduling. How are the schedules?
Like what time is your core curriculum subjects?
Well, this is what we call a mapping conversation, and it's based off of a lot of things, including the student's option number, which talks about how many hours of service a student is entitled to, as well as what available services are in the building. And if we start with special ed mapping, my recommendation, and then build that into the master schedule versus the opposite, I find that we're able to serve kids more effectively because we've had the ones with the most intensive needs in mind first. And so if you're not familiar with mapping, that's a process we are happy to help you with.
So my next question is, if you all are doing, I guess you call it push-in co-teaching, are you still doing the pull-out service?
We have teachers doing both.
Yeah. It just depends on what that child needs. No, you're fine. That's right. But I'm just saying it depends on what the child needs. But we would hope that you kind of decrease that so they're in there with their typical peers.
Okay, so here are some co-teaching models. One is called lead and support, where one teach, one observe, or one teach and one assist. It's probably my least favorite model,
Right.
personally, because still you have one doing the bulk of the work. Then you have station teaching, which I think that worked best for me when I was in the elementary setting and in a functional skills setting, because we could rotate, my assistants and I, or even in a gen ed setting, we could rotate and get those things done. And then you have the parallel teaching, which sounds like what you guys were doing back there. You were teaching at the same time, and you said it was what? Loud.
But I've even done that in a high school setting. So in the English class, yeah, so the English class, ninth grade English, of course she knew the content, but I'm the one to break it down. So she was on one side of the room and I was on the other side of the room. So whatever she would say, we already collaborated in lesson plans, so I already knew. Bam. Okay, so what she said was A, B, C, D, and then boop, 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 boop.
Then we have alternative teaching, where one will have like a larger group and somebody might have a small group, and then, you know, they may go back and forth with that. And that's when you probably pull those kids that need a little bit more intervention, while they're probably moving on to independent practice or something. And so I'm going to pull this group back here. And then my ultimate favorite, but it is a little difficult, is team teaching. I highly suggest team teaching model of co-teaching, because I think when you're thinking about high leverage practices and really trying to ensure that all students are getting the best education and everyone is accountable for that, I just love that model, because you're feeding off each other, you're both accountable for all the students in the room, and you're working. Everybody's working and moving, and you're working together to do it.
And you hold each other accountable. You know, she might have came in and had a rough morning, but I already know what the lesson is, so I might have to take over a certain portion and she might have to just come in on the end, or vice versa. Or I might be like, okay, I really got a cool idea for this on how I'm going to present this, and then this is how we can present it, because we got a couple of scholars that are still not getting it. So it's helping to have that accountability.
I get a question a lot in my role is, which model should we pick? And I'm like, I don't think it's a matter of picking one.
Right.
It's what works for you to present this content, and like recognizing that this is a fluid concept. You're not stuck.
Right.
You can't, you know, it's not like you can't change your mind.
Right.
And team teaching is one of my favorites as well, but it's not always
Right,
appropriate.
right,
And
right.
it's sometimes not possible.
Exactly.
And so you know, but thinking about that and reflecting on your practices and deciding it consciously is the key piece here. We're doing it intentionally.
And see what works best with your lesson plan.
Exactly.
Yep.
Because like I said, even in an inclusion, in a functional skills setting, for me, station teaching worked really, really well, because I typically in K-5 would have up to 22 students. And so, you know, the age and the levels were so varying, and it was kind of hard to really group. So we would rotate between me and my assistants, and we would just, you know, and then we might not get to everybody that day, but by the end of the week, we've all gotten there, and that worked best for us.
Yep.
All right, so.
So their team taught lessons are basically well planned. Both teachers are actively involved in the lesson and within the lesson, as well as we share the instruction, and it's not like just a you or I. We're doing it together, and there's no clearly defined leader. We're collaborating and we're doing it effectively. And sometimes we may have to switch roles just depending on the content and who's more familiar with what. But you've already just determined that by your lesson planning.
And so for me, I'm an ELA person. So I already have a phobia about math. Even though everybody says you think so mathematically, I have a phobia about math. But so in ELA, I'm rocking and rolling. You're gonna get all that energy in math. I'm like, yeah, and what she said, you know. But you know, I'm gonna be a part of it, but I'm not as confident. But you know, over time, you know, if we work together next year, it probably would grow. But it doesn't happen right away. So don't think you're gonna go in and, oh, we got this by the end of the week. It takes time because you do have to learn content and you do have to learn each other. So what are some benefits of team teaching? You do have the greatest amount of shared responsibility. It allows for creativity and lesson delivery. Like I said, she's really bubbly. I'm super shy. And she knows that I like for her to always start off because I have this level of anxiety of public speaking. And so I'll say, okay, go ahead and get them started, and then I'll you know, move on in. And so that works for us. It prompts teachers to try innovative techniques. Like you two guys, y'all were bouncing off each other. And you guys found your way around it. It requires the greatest amount of trust and commitment. You trusted that her chant was going to work out, right? You trusted that. You trusted me.
Right.
You were vulnerable and you
gave
trusted
him
me.
look
You
at
was
first.
like,
oh,
all three, like, what is this? We can make it happen, right? And with the three of you, do you all know each other? I know you do. I figured that. And so, but you still made it work.
Still made it work.
And you guys were up there when you see the video, like y'all were 3 peas in a pod. But because of that, it's also probably one of the most difficult to implement because it does take that vulnerability and that trust and being able to plan and talk things out. But those are some benefits. Things to consider. What are your strengths of your style?
What are the limitations of your style?
What style do you find most difficult to work with and why?
And what do people from other different and directional styles need to know so that you can work together? So those habits.
It requires conversations, right? It requires feedback. The one thing I had to learn as a teacher, especially once I've been teaching a long time. When you've been teaching a long time, you think you know everything, right? Oh, I got this. You know, I've been doing this a long time. But what I found probably in my 11th year, I didn't have it. And I was still evolving and learning and growing. And with that, I had to try different things. And I had to trust the people around me. And so that was a lot. I learned that I was type A. And I was a little controlling in my own room. We always say gen ed teachers don't want anybody in their room. But I was like more of...
Yes.
I was very sensitive about my students, and I wanted them to always get the most. Like, I used to battle with some of my assistants. Like, they'll bring the TV and I'd roll it out. Like, me and one of my assistants, we did this for like 2 weeks. She'd bring it in and I'd roll it out. Neither one of us ever said anything. So I never wanted them to have that type of learning because a lot of times that's what they get at home.
Right.
And so, but learning and trusting in feedback, you know, not just from my administrators, but from the people who are in there with me every day. And even from my good experience with the math teacher, she said, you got to get out there. She's like, you got to trust yourself. And I was just so nervous. It took me about a good semester to really feel comfortable to walk around and be like, oh, okay, you got this, da, 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 da. It took me a minute because math was not my thing. And so we did have to have those conversations, and I had to be vulnerable to her feedback. But I think the biggest thing that helped me was the data. Usually in faculty meetings, when they started talking about data, they would say, oh, this doesn't pertain to you. So I would always check out, and when it pertained to me, I didn't know what I was looking at. But once I started really looking at it and seeing, oh, this is where the misconceptions are, it really helped with the planning. It really helped me understand what my students needed. And so that one good experience that I had, we were rocking and rolling because she was data driven even before it became a thing. And so those are things that you have to do. I became real intentional about meeting with my related service providers, my assistants. Even now, I'm really intentional about meeting with my teachers. I check in with them. And I try to check in with my administrators when they don't cancel on me. But, you know, just having those conversations and being in the know and letting it be a partnership, that's very important. All right, so let's take a look at this video really quickly. Is divorce an option? We said that it's like a marriage, but what happens when it doesn't always go the way you think?
Hands up if you agree. Let's give Juan Carlos 3 steps. We'll count 3. 1, 2, 3.
It's a mutual respect that we have for each other. She respects that I'm an educator. I'm not just somebody who's in there to service some children who have IEPs or 504s.
Hi, gentlemen, can we put our markers and boards somewhere else?
I think of her as my right hand, and myself being her right hand, the two of us really helping each other through lessons and making sure that we can get to all of the kids. And that's one of the key components of the co-teaching, is reaching all learners as fast as possible and not letting things go.
You need to say there are kids. It's not my classroom. Dawn always says our homeroom, our kids, well, we are doing this. And that makes the special educator feel more welcome.
What is nonfiction? What is nonfiction? And this is done like
I feel like it's a really good model for kids to see their teachers who they look to for a role model. How are you communicating? Oh, okay, well, they're disagreeing with that. How are they working that out?
Sarah and I, we actually went to college together.
We had a couple of classes together. I think we were together for one semester.
And she showed up here at Norwood, and her and I were both like, I know you.
I saw her in the hallway, and I was actually really nervous. I was like, did she like me in college? Is she going to give me a good recommendation? And then, and she seemed really excited to see me.
And from that moment on, we just became friends in the building. And, you know, we can sit down and talk about kids, talk about life. And I think that it does help when you have that relationship with a co-teacher to start off at the basics, understanding where each other come from, understanding each other's lives and what's going on in your life.
You're not on an island. You have a partner, and you have to understand it's like your relationship with your spouse. You have got to talk about the uncomfortable things.
yellow folks, you need, hold up, listen first. Listen, always listen first.
And I know that the co-teaching model also says that it is like a marriage. You go through the stages where you're dating at first. Yeah, Sarah and I, we knew each other before, but now it's a new relationship because I've never taught with her before. She had never taught with me. So now we're like in that dating phase where I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, how do you want to do this? Oh, okay, well, I would rather do it like this, and going back and forth, and her saying, oh yeah, it's an awesome idea. And then we get into like the engagement where it's all exciting and we're feeling like, wow, this is working great. I love it. I think we should continue in this relationship. And then getting to that final marriage where you are going to run into problems, but it's okay because the two of you have each other. And that's what it's all about.
That we kind of noticed from that video. We kind of already talked about some of the things, but what did you guys notice? Or anything you picked up on?
Which
You couldn't tell it was a gen ed SPED
Yes.
teacher? Same thing.
I was gonna say the same.
Same thing. What about the kids? Is there anything different you noticed? You couldn't tell,
Couldn't
right?
tell which one was
What kids
SPED.
were, which group. It wasn't like, this is Miss So-and-so's, this is Miss So-and-so's. What about when they talked about the dating and the marriage? What about that?
Yeah, that's the part that makes it work. It's hard to co-teach with someone if you don't have a connection. And then each person that you work with, because our school's like fully inclusive, so like every year it would almost be like a different person. I would always say, this is so hard if a person doesn't stay. And I think like with us, it was because by the time we got to that third year, it was just like, okay, so we do a repeat of, but like learning personalities and then understanding that, each person is a different person, but learning personalities and being okay with that, it has to be a connection, even if you say, well, we don't necessarily have to be friends outside of here, but we definitely got to be friends
Within the school,
inside
yep.
of here. Because if you don't, then the kids pick up on that. And so if the kids know that there's divisiveness between the teachers, then nobody's learning anything because they're just going to play off each other. Like, you know,
Exactly.
mom and dad, like you say,
Yep.
good cop, bad cop, and then that's all they want to do.
And it's gonna break
This
up
one
that
said I
dynamic.
can do it, this one said I couldn't, so if this was, I know this one said we can't, so I'm gonna go over here and, you know, try to get this one to do it. So you have to have that connection where you guys are the same. Like, it's no, if this, if, you know, Miss A said no, then it should be no for Miss B as well. And the kids have to know that, like, they have to know that.
And one thing I can say about that, when they talk about dating, one thing we tried with the whole staff 1 year was at the beginning of the school year, we all did speed dating. So we had one set of teachers sit on one side and one set of teachers sit on the other side, and we kind of knew things and started learning things about each other that we wouldn't normally have known. And that helped for the dynamic, not only with the co-teachers, but you got to remember, they also have to work with the other people in the building. So if they come in or there's a sub or something like that, you want everybody to be comfortable and know how this works. You don't want one person, just like a marriage, to come in and break up your household, right? So it was better for us to kind of lay those layers down and kind of get to know each other. So even still, if you're not in my room, I still can come to you and say, okay, so we're talking about XYZ in our class today. You know, what are some things you can kind of tell me about that? Because I need to have that open dialogue with the other people in the school. Because remember, I don't know all the subject. I don't know all the curriculum. I might need to lean on somebody in the school. So think about that also when we're planning this out and collaborating. Remember how we talked about the related service providers? They're coming in, sometimes they need to know the content because they might be sitting there talking about what are we doing in handwriting today or what do we need to do for this core subject. So I always remember that.
And when she said there's a new person a lot, think of it like a step parent.
Right.
Coming into a marriage.
Right.
And
How do you make them feel comfortable?
And the parent that you're coming in a relationship with has children that you have to grow a relationship with, grow their trust. And, you know, so
That's a shared responsibility.
yeah,
still,
that's still a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
And you still have to say, well, just because that's your stepfather or your stepmother, you know, you still going to respect them just like you respect me.
Yep.
And when I say no and they say no, it's the same. It's one.
Yep. That unified front. We always been told that, but we forget it sometimes. But you may, hey, we might disagree with it, but hey, you know, right now, we gotta stick to our guns while the kids are in here.
We're going to just turn and talk for about 45 seconds. Let's look at this quote. All students can learn. However, not all students should be expected to learn everything and not all at the same time. I want you to be thinking about how do you feel about this quote, what are the possible barriers, and what can you do together to accomplish this?
A quick turn and talk.
We got 15 minutes. We got 15 minutes. Turn you back in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Share out. How do you feel about this quote?
I don't like the part where it said, however, not all students should be expected to learn everything. I don't like that. That's the first thing that when I read that, that's the first thing that kind of stuck out to me. However, not all students should be expected to learn. My motto is every student can learn. No matter the disability, no matter the challenges, no matter the barrier, every student should be expected to learn. I don't care if one student learning letter sounds today and another student is learning compound words. Both of them should be able to learn that subject, what they're learning that day.
So if you're co-teaching, what if you have someone with that mindset? How do you work through that?
I just, as a gen ed math teacher, I'm with the first statements, all students can learn. However, because I teach a tested subject, they are gonna have to learn everything because the state tested them, because I teach geometry, it's tested. So just because they have an IEP, and I mean, I say this all the time, and you know, some people get mad, I don't care. But when it comes to math, they all come in deficient. They're all there's no way to tell the difference because most of them come in deficient in math. But to say not to learn everything, the expectation for me is yes, you have to learn what the state has said that you're supposed to know for this state test at the end. Now, I don't know how it is for elementary or whatever, but I teach high school and those standards, ACT, there's a standard. There's not, you gotta know what's on there so you can, regardless, you know.
Does anybody have a different take? Yes.
I do. So in many ways, I do agree with you. I work with a lot of students who are on an alternate assessment diploma pathway, and we push really hard for inclusive opportunities because we do strongly believe in that least dangerous assumption that every student has the right to learn, and while maybe, even if mastery isn't necessarily the end result, that doesn't mean we don't attempt, right? So I do expect that everyone learn and that everyone make progress. I don't necessarily expect that they're going to master those grade level standards to the depth and breadth of a typical peer, because that's why we've created this individualized plan and an alternate assessment pathway. But being on an alternate assessment pathway does not also mean that you reduce the rigor or reduce the exposure to grade level standards. You present it in a way that's accommodated and heavily modified. And that inclusive opportunity then becomes meaningful for them if you are able to do both those things. And so inclusion isn't just limited to students who have specific learning disabilities or speech language impairments. It is for anybody with a disability. And so our most impacted are students who have the more complex learning needs. That includes them as well. And I think that is a mindset I really see teachers struggling with because it is hard. It is hard to modify. But that is a comment I just wanted to add to that.
So real quickly, here are some barriers to co-teaching.
Which some of you talked about already: misunderstanding of others' missions and duties, personality issues or distrust. That's a major deal breaker right there. You got to be able to trust each other and depend on each other. Because even, let's just say, for instance, that gen ed teacher was out, you have to be in there to carry on that load as well because you're a part of that class. Ineffective communication. Hey, if there was some cake in the teacher's lounge, why you ain't tell me too? Like, I'm just saying, you know, I wanted to get some too. Or bring me a piece. Common planning availability. That's the key thing that a lot of people do not have, is that common planning. But I'm sorry, you have to make time or figure out a way. I know one thing that we discussed is that we use a shared drive in Google Drive. And let's say yours is due on Friday, and then the special ed teacher has enough time over the weekend to kind of come in and say her notes. That way you're still collaborating, but it might not be face-to-face.
Yeah, because myself and our EL coordinator, we tried really great. Like, we were so excited, right, Ms. Burnside, at the beginning of the year. All our teachers had time to prep, and then we had time for them to have common planning time, and now they're looking at us like, I thought you said. Things happened, classes grew, and so it doesn't always happen, but we do have where they can have access to the lesson plans, and hopefully they do like talk to each other, and so they can comment and add and tweak and change, so they always have access and know what's going on, and also the student work. This is one thing that we have to learn. Anybody heard of radical candor?
Those are those crucial conversations.
Having those crucial conversations. So, you know, where we want to be is in that upper right-hand corner where we're, you know, hey, Miss Susie, you know, today you were late for class. Next time, can you just maybe send me an email, you know, and let me know what's going on, versus standing and ruin this empathy where you come in, she comes in, and you just kind of roll your eyes and you're angry and you're upset, but you're not really saying anything, right? Or you're in that mistrust place and you're like, Miss Susie, you know, you could have just told me that you were going to be late, you know, so there's still that tension. Right. Or you're in that bottom right where, you know, it comes into a blow up, right? And so you don't want to be in those places. You want to be able to have those conversations with each other, but you have to have them. You know, every day is not going to be peaches and cream, not even for our team back here, our dream team. You have to have those conversations. So how do we get there? Planning. Co-teaching teams need time to plan and commit to the planning process. it looks differently for different places because it does all come down to scheduling and staffing in your school. You do have to be creative, and you know, I'll never tell anybody to work outside of work or come before work, but you and your counterparts have to figure out what works for you, because that does look different in every place. Common planning allows both teachers to feel commitment, and if there is no planning time available, this will limit the types of co-teaching that can be used, but it can still happen. Like I said, we use a shared drive so they can go in and both be looking at it, and they can look at it in real time. So maybe if my group is working on independent practice or something, and that'll give me time to go in and we can like make changes and we can see that.
Deposition. Basically, how we work together and important things we need to consider. So basically, there are some no goals for each person. So we need to make sure that's understandable, and we understand that at all costs. We don't want to come in and say, hey, we just got this 100,000 goal, and then after that, you know, we're not working together to meet that goal. Sometimes stuff is just unrealistic. It is what it is.
And the biggest piece is just evaluating the process. Just like with behavior plans or IEPs, what we write don't always work, right? And sometimes we got to go back, reflect on it, look at what's happening, looking at student achievement, because that's the ultimate goal, right? Is to make sure that we are building good students, right? And making sure that they're having rigorous academic learning. So being able to sit down and talk to each other, what went well this week? How do you think the students felt about this? What do you think about this strategy? What do you think we need to do for this? Like really reflecting on your practices and being vulnerable to that feedback.
Because sometimes you may have to reteach.
And so you're planning with a purpose.
Maintain the co-teacher relationship by creating a meeting agenda to reflect the experience. That's one thing we do. We kind of go in there blindsided. We don't know what we're talking about. We're just like, oh, we're talking about a lesson plan. But we got to keep to it. We can't talk about what we had last night for dinner. We can't talk about what we went over the weekend. Basically, all we're going to do is stick to what we need to focus on during the planning.
All right, and so then we see that there are levels to a collaborative relationship. So if I'm just present, we're what? Coexisting. If we're present and we're planning, we're just co-working. If we are present, planning, and presenting, we're co-instructing. But if we are present, planning, presenting, problem solving, and processing, and I'll add reflecting, we are co-teaching.
We can bounce.
Okay,
You know,
what do you mean by bounce?
Bounce means you're fresh. You can bring in fresh new ideas. Since you are the new generation with the iPads, with the technology and stuff, and I'm old school, so I'm always holding this pencil and writing stuff out. So you can help me, and we can help each other.
You know, technology's amazing, and that's something I'm really good at. Could I be like, I could make some Google Forms where we like have all these different things to track the data, and then we could track their progress, and it could project out their, you know, anticipated goals. You know, that's something I could totally help you with.
And I'm good with planning. I have to be organized. Okay. If I don't get organized, I can't do it. My brain doesn't go past a certain, but that organizing thing, I got that. So I tell you what, we can sit down together, talk some things out, because our first lesson, we got to teach those letter sounds. So we can find out some ways, and you can come up with some stuff. We can play some games with the children, and I can help organize, and we can do this together.
Is there a co-teaching model you think we should follow?
Well, I think the school has something, but I think you and I can do this.
Okay.
You and I can do this, and we can present it to the administrators and see what they think.
Oh, good. I'm excited to work with you.
So what is one takeaway from that scenario? What is one takeaway from that scenario?
Even though she said that she was old school with like the pen and the paper, she was very open to the new teacher. And like, you know, when she said, I'm so excited to be working from you and learning from you, she didn't kill her excitement. She was like, okay, well, I'm a planner. Maybe we can work together, and I can do Google Form. Well, what is that? Right. But it was like she was open to working with her, and then them working together with the mix of like the old and the new.
Yeah.
So I'm glad. Thank you guys for today. I hope you've learned something that you can take away and use in your class. So your note catcher, I know you didn't get a chance to write your notes, but it kind of asked about what were your predetermination before you came in, and then what did you kind of learn after that. And then we also gave you, for you to kind of start having those radical candor when you get back to your school with the planning guide. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Dr. Alston and Ms. Morrell, wow, this was full of great stuff and great participation with our participants here today. Thank you very much. I want to let everyone know that the PowerPoint from this presentation will be available for you to review later if you'd like to. It'll be on our website, mtsu.edu/CEM. I'll say it again, mtsu.edu/CEM. The PowerPoint from this presentation and our other presentations will be available for you to review at that time. The questions we had today listed on our list back here were pretty much all addressed because you were so thorough. Are there any questions here in the group that you would like to ask before we take a break this morning? Yes.
It's a question, but it's kind of like a question statement. Like when you, like your presentation, I think was very, very effective. But I think like a lot of times we get this presentation where it's SPED teachers. Like how do you have the conversation when you get back to your schools that I think a presentation like this should include more gen ed teachers? Because like we go to school, so we know the teaching models and, we know, okay, parallel teaching and team teaching, but it's usually like our gen ed counterparts that don't know those things. And I think these kind of conversations should be more inclusive of them with us. But like, how do you, go back and be like, hey, when can we include the gen ed teachers? Because I think they need this information sometimes a little more than we do.
Well, basically at our school, I do it every beginning of the year.
Okay.
But I know they also have where they can come as well.
And your question is across the board from many, many people. That's one reason we do the cross collaborative here, where we bring together different disciplines. And please go to our website, check some of our videos on co-teaching, because we have some other material on that. Because what you're talking about is an essential piece. Thank you for asking that.